So in the previous lesson, we discussed about the fundamental axiom of femboyology, which states that no femboy can be a femboy if he isn't a male from birth. Now this axiom allows us to ignore, for the time being, existential paradoxes such as the transgender femboy. And I'm actually going to be discussing about the transgender femboy and their paradoxical existence in a separate lecture, but that's going to be a couple lectures from now. So for today's lecture, we're going to be talking about the pillars and origins of femboys. So where it all began and how far back we trace. Femboyology began with what are known as traps, most notably two very important figures or two very important traps. The first one to your left is Astolfo, and to your right is Felix Argyle. Both of these traps are from the Anatomy of Fate Grand Order / Apocrypha. And by definition, the trap is a male character that presents in a feminine manner to the point where he can be confused with an actual female, even though his biological gender or sex is a male. Before I go into the history of femboys, and actually, guys, femboys beyond anime, we need to first discuss about effeminacy. And by definition, effeminacy is basically, as it says here, the manifestation of traits in the male that are more often associated with feminine behavior, mannerism, style, or gender roles, rather than with traditionally masculine behavior, mannerisms, or gender style or roles. So essentially, this is telling us, effeminacy is telling us, well, it's not the traditional masculine one, but rather it's more effeminate, more expressively female than expressively male. The origins of femboys actually go beyond anime with Astolfo and Felix Argyle. History of femboys in general, and being effeminate traces all the way back to ancient Greece and ancient Rome. The Greek historian Plutarch recounts that Periander, the tyrant of Ambracia, asked his boy, quote, "Aren't you pregnant yet?" quote unquote, in the presence of other people, causing the boy to kill him in revenge for being treated as if effeminate or a woman. Sorry for the noise, there's a construction going on right here at the university, but disregarding the noise. The boy, which is probably the partner of Periander, killed him just because he was treated as if a woman, as if he were a woman, or as if he were an effeminate entity. And so this angered the boy and killed him in revenge. This is honestly a tragic one. So anyway, going ahead, it says here, as part of Greek politicians' proof that namely Aeschines proved that a member of the prosecution against him, Timarchus, had prostituted himself or been kept up by another man while young. He attributed fellow prosecutor Demosthenes, nicknamed Batalos, which is a Greek for ass, to his unmanliness in Kinaidea, and frequently commented on his unmanly and womanish temper, even going as far as to criticizing his clothing. What he said was, quote, "If anyone took those dainty little coats and soft shirts off you and took them round for the jurors to handle, I think they'd be quite unable to say, if they hadn't been told in advance whether they had hold of a man's clothing or a woman's." So what Aeschines said was he was criticizing Demosthenes for wearing feminine apparel to the point, or apparel actually, or clothes to the point where if you were to take it from him and give it to a bunch of jurors, they wouldn't tell which gender these clothes came from, whether it's from a guy or a gal. They wouldn't know because it's feminine, but at the same time it's sort of masculine. It came from a man, they wouldn't be sure. And so going ahead here, there was a The late Greek erotes, love or forms of desire, affairs of the heart, preserved with manuscripts by a writer, author, Lucian, contains a debate between two men, Charicles and Callicratidas, over the relative merits of women and boys as vehicles of male sexual pleasure. So this is beyond just interacting with the pussy. We are now transcending beyond just sex. So, moving forward, he criticized Callicratidas' predilection for boys. So it says here, far from being effeminized by his sexual predilection for boys, Callicratidas' inclination renders him hypervirile. Callicratidas' sexual desire for boys then makes him more of a man. It does not weaken or subvert his male gender identity, but rather consolidates it. So what this piece of text here is saying is that by liking boys, his masculinity is not affected, but rather strengthened. So by liking boys and wishing to have intercourse with them, he is actually manlier rather than more feminine. So it's it's telling us that liking feminine things or liking feminine boys does not affect your masculinity. Alright? So you can still be masculine even though you like guys. Alright? So this is a good example of how one's motions, actions are not indicative of his orientation or his masculinity, or rather condition. So now, those are some examples from the earliest form of the femboy from ancient Greece. Now we move on to ancient Rome. It says here, over refinement, fine clothes and other possessions, the company of women, certain trades, and too much fondness with women were all deemed effeminate traits in Roman society. Taking an inappropriate sexual position, passive or bottom, in same gender intercourse was considered effeminate and unnatural. So that means being a bottom means that you're immediately effeminate, even though there are bottoms out there that are actually quite masculine. And the study of bottoms, tops, versatile switches, I will discuss that in a separate course, which will be position theory. I'll be discussing that in that course, but just for the sake here, I'm not really going to be discussing it, but that will be discussed in that separate course, which is position theory. It's covered under the same major actually, so yeah, it's actually quite that. For some reason, touching the head with a finger, wearing a goatee were also considered effeminate. So if you had a goatee, you'd be considered effeminate. And going back to the beginning of what I said, over refinement, fine clothes and other possessions, these things are considered effeminate by Roman standards. So if you love the company of women, if you like them as friends and stuff like that so much, they're gonna deem you effeminate. Alright? There are some trades, it says here, certain trades, they don't specify it, but there are certain trades that when you commence in it, you are immediately considered effeminate. And also over refinement, if you want to make something so perfect, basically containing OCD, renders you effeminate, right? And so it says here, Roman consul Scipio Aemilianus questioned one of his opponents, P. Sulpicius Gallus, for the kind of man who adorns himself daily in front of a mirror. I'm gonna say that quotes, okay? Wearing perfume, whose eyebrows are shaved off, who walks around with plucked beard and thighs, who when he was a young man reclined at banquets next to his lover, wearing a long-sleeved tunic, who is fond of men as he is of wine. Can anyone doubt that he has done what Sinaidi are in the habit of doing? So basically, what Scipio Aemilianus was telling or was questioning towards P. Sulpicius Gallus, one of his opponents, was that if he has done these things, can anyone doubt that he has done what Sinaidi are in the habit of doing, or what gay men are in the habit of doing? And the answer to that is no. But at the same time, this is one of the perfect examples of stereotyping and how not good stereotyping is, because what Scipio Aemilianus was doing here was stereotyping P. Sulpicius Gallus just because he was effeminate. He was immediately assumed as a gay person. Now I have an older brother who used to like fluffy things. He loved fluffy things back when he was college, and he loved some effeminate stuff. But he has 2 children right now, and he has a girlfriend. One of his children is actually my nephew. He's pretty cool. And so that's indicative. So he used to like a tad bit feminine stuff, but he was not effeminate. So we cannot immediately assume that when someone is being effeminate, he or she is immediately, or mostly just he is immediately gay. We cannot assume that. And so, yeah, there's actually some examples here from the Bible. The Bible is really something that that really pops up when it comes to our studies, because they contain a lot of things. One notable thing during the Old Testament is about the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, which many people depict to be actual cities that were full of gay men, and that God destroyed the 2 cities because those gay men existed there. But let me tell you this is not really redundant. The story is not really that true, because this must have been lost in translation, because what the Bible really meant to say was that the 2 cities were full of sinners. Well, not entirely full, because there were some men who were clean, and we wanted those guys to be spared. And yeah, that's to be discussed in different course. But that is actually a brief discussion on the origins, actually in history, how far back Femboys have actually gone, and it's actually fascinating how they have existed already since ancient Greece, the ancient times, and they have existed all throughout time up until the present day. Alright, so that's the end of this lecture. For the next lecture, make sure you guys check out the syllabus. I will be posting the syllabus in a moment's notice. The next thing we're gonna cover is gonna be, I think it's gonna be the fundamental theorem of, no, actually, we're gonna be discussing the bussy, a fundamental entity. I haven't really gone into detail about what the bussy is, but I will be discussing it in the next lecture. So, yeah, look, stay tuned for that. I will be posting the syllabus for the course, and also you guys will also see your homeworks there if needed. Send it to my email so that I'll be able to grade you guys on your performance in that homework. So I'll see you guys in the next lecture, and thank you for watching.